Okay, think of a forest. Think of all the green that comes to your mind. Think of all the life that comes to your mind as well. If you're watching this video, chances are you believe forests are beautiful and sacred, and we should do all we can to preserve them. In fact, you probably agree that we should preserve nature in general. And most likely, you probably also think about nature as a wonderful place to relax and disconnect from your busy life. Well, the fact is that looking at nature this way is new. This wasn't the case for most of our history. Let me put it this way. Nobody in the ancient world or the Middle Ages ever said, "I wish I could get back to nature to reconnect with myself." Forests, deserts, jungles. For years and years, these were places that men and women avoided. Sometimes for religious reasons, sometimes because they were full of dangers. We had to wait until the 19th century for people to develop a different perception of nature, especially of wilderness. Many things were changing in our lives at the time, but three were key. Cities were growing, the world was industrializing, and the need for agricultural lands was rising. It was in this context that we can understand the appearance of the first national parks. People and governments wanted to separate large quantities of land that were menaced by these three forces. It was also here that people began to think of humans as a force of destruction. Civilization destroyed wilderness, man destroyed nature. Throughout the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st, this man versus nature dichotomy only got stronger in our minds. Many factors contributed to this, but one has always fascinated me because of its power and the influence in many generations: Disney productions. I couldn't possibly talk of all the movies and TV shows, but there are two films that exemplify the way in which Disney has tended to portray nature: Bambi and The Lion King. Bambi made its debut in 1942 in the middle of the Second World War. The film told the story of a young deer and his friends in the forest. While it was a flop in the box office at the beginning, during the second half of the 20th century, it became a classic watched by millions around the world. Throughout the movie, there were scenes in which humans represented destruction and fear, but one definitely stands out. Who doesn't remember the way in which hunters killed Bambi's mother? This scene, perhaps more than any other in film history, clearly portrayed humans as the disruptors of peace and quiet in nature. This is the lesson that Bambi left in all of us. On the other hand, The Lion King reached cinemas in 1994 with great box office success. The film followed Simba, a young lion who has to fight his uncle to regain his place as the true heir to the kingdom. Perhaps the most recognizable aspect of the film is the idea of the circle of life in the animal kingdom. Simba's father taught him the importance of this balance in nature. Simba's uncle, on the other hand, broke this balance, and the kingdom fell into vast disarray full of drought and erosion. Simba, at the end, brings back this balance after regaining the throne. Although humans were never portrayed in the film, the idea of a force that disrupted the beautiful balance of the wild sure made all of us think of man. These, of course, are just two quick examples that show how Disney helped reinforce in all of us the man versus nature dichotomy. Of course, these were not the only films. Think Davy Crockett in 1955, or The Jungle Book in 1967, or White Fang in 1991, or even Pocahontas in 1995, among others. In all of them, Wilderness is beautifully balanced, and although humans, especially white ones, should learn much from it, they are also a threat, and their place is clearly outside of the wild. Strangely enough, Disney helped us fall in love with wild animals by making them human in many ways. They talked like us, had human emotions, and lived in traditional families that reflected more the suburban families of the US at the time than the actual lives of these animals. But that is a story for another time. Okay, to be sure, humans have altered in dangerous ways many biological and physical processes on Earth. Our lives and the lives of other animals will continue to be in danger if we don't correct some of our practices. However, environmental historians often point to us that a good step to properly take care of our world is to avoid these dichotomies of man versus nature or civilization versus wilderness. After all, we are a part of the natural world, and there is no reason to think that a tree in the city is less natural than a tree in a national park. Okay, that's all for now. But in the meantime, don't forget that everything has a history behind it. And there is no better way to understand people and ideas and just the world in general than by understanding its history. So, sprinkle a little bit of history in your life.